It's time to start your morning by taking 5. Here's your host, Matt McMaster.
You're listening to Take 5, quick 5-minute take on the biggest things happening in Nebraska sports. I'm your host, Matt McMaster, and today we are talking about what does success look like this season for Nebraska football. Now, the reason I'm talking about this topic pretty early in the year is because it's a question I think that would garner a lot of different answers from people. I think you would get some people who would say, hey, 10-2 and making the college football playoff, that would be a successful season to me. Look at what Indiana did. No reason why Nebraska, with this schedule this season, can do that. You would have other people who would say, hey, we haven't won 9 games since the Mike Riley era. It'd be cool to get back to the Pelini era when winning 9 games was a regular thing. 9 wins would be a successful season. There would be some people who would say, hey, 8 wins is kind of a mark of a good team. If you're a good team, you win 8 games. I'd like to see Nebraska just be established as a good team this season. 8 wins will do. There might be some people who would say, hey, 7-5 would mean progress, and any sort of progress with Nebraska football means success. And so that's what they would say. 7-5 would even be considered a successful season because last year they were 6-6 in the regular season. To me, success means 2 things this year for Nebraska football. If both things do not happen, then I do not think it's a successful year. The first is 8 wins. I just think 8 wins is the marker, like I said, marker of a good team. Look at the schedule that they have. They only play Penn State. They don't play Penn State and Oregon or Penn State and Oregon, Ohio State. Considering the fact that their non-con is pretty easy as well, this schedule, 8 wins should be attainable, right? I mean, this team is probably going to be favored in 8 games anyway. So just win the games that you're favored. But the second point of success this season for me, and I think it even goes beyond how many wins you have this year, is Dylan Raiola making a jump. Dylan Raiola making a big leap. Because let's be honest, there were flashes of greatness last year. There were indications that, hey, there's a reason why he was a 5-star. There's a reason why he was so highly touted. There's a reason why he's making a lot of money in the NIL. You saw those instances. But overall, he didn't have that great of a year. He was average to slightly below average. Now, you can say what you want to say about the offensive coordinator situation, but I do think that there definitely were some mistakes that Dylan made by himself, regardless of who was calling the plays. And I am confident that he is going to make a jump with Dana Holgorsen as his offensive coordinator. But the reason I think his jump is so important to this team is because he is the foundation of what this rebuild has been built around. He is the guy. And not only just from a football perspective, but also from an optics perspective. He is the face of the team. He is the face of Nebraska. He is, when you think of Nebraska football today, if you were to ask a national reporter, hey, close your eyes, what's the first thing you think of when you think of Nebraska football? The first thing that they'll think of right now is Matt Rhule and or Dylan Raiola. Those two are tied at the hip. Matt Rhule's tenure and what's going on right now in Nebraska football is tied to Dylan Raiola. If Dylan does not take the jump, if Dylan does not become a top quarterback or considered to be one of the top quarterbacks eventually in his career at Nebraska, it's going to mean that this thing probably didn't go all that well. Okay? That Nebraska football didn't reach the heights that we thought in the first go-around of Matt Rhule's tenure here as the football coach. And secondly, I think it will also feed into kind of the negative optics of what Nebraska football is looked at from the casual national football fan. Because when Dylan Raiola picked Georgia over Nebraska, there were a lot of people who were shocked, who were like, wow, why would you go to Nebraska? Why would you go there? Why would you not go to Georgia? Nebraska's where, they haven't done anything in 10 years. That guy, he just made the worst decision of his life. Why would Dylan Raiola make such a stupid decision and not go to the back-to-back national champions and instead go to the longest bowl drought in the country? Why would he do that? And if Dylan Raiola were to fail here at Nebraska, it would do a lot of the work. It would undo a lot of the work that Matt Rule has done over the last 3 years now, close to it, of trying to make Nebraska back relevant on the national surface. Because Matt Rule goes to all these events, does all these interviews, contacts all these recruits, has all of these connections because he wants people to know, hey, Nebraska is back to being a national brand. Nebraska is back to being a heavy hitter. Where we're going, Nebraska is going to be where they were 30 years ago. We're back on the right path. Everything he does is to put Nebraska football into the minds of people. But if Dylan Raiola were to fail, if Dylan Raiola were not to develop into a top quarterback with his talent under Matt Rule, it would undo all of that because the people who called him crazy for picking Nebraska over Georgia would be right. And also, Matt Rule was hired in part because he was known as a player developer in college. You look at his recruiting classes that he had in Temple and Baylor, they weren't that highly touted, but man, they produced a lot of NFL talent. And that's what Matt Rule became known for. He develops talent. If Matt Rule were to be given this diamond and Dylan Raiola and not able to get him to where we believe he can be, even if it's not directly his fault or not, we are going to not only just as a national fan base or national media look negatively on Matt Rule, but us as a local fan base, as a Nebraska fan, are going to look negatively on Matt Rule and start to question, can he actually develop talent? Can he actually do that? He got this great quarterback and he didn't take that step. How do we know next time when you get another quarterback who'll probably be less talented, how do we know that he's going to develop? We can't trust that anymore. So in order to establish Nebraska back as a national power, and in order to keep the trust that these fans have in Matt Rule as a player developer, Dylan Raiola needs to take a big step this season as a quarterback. On top of that, he cannot take a big step and then they only win 7 games. Because if he takes a big step and they only win 7 games, then what do you do at that point? You know, there'll probably be teams out there saying, well, we'll pay him more money to come play for us and we'll take his talent and we'll actually win games with him. And if Nebraska football were to win 8 games, but they do it in spite of Dylan Raiola, that would be another situation where I'm sitting there thinking, kind of feel negatively about the year because your golden goose didn't develop into what he can become. So to me, they're birds of a feather. 8 wins this season, and Dylan Raiola takes a step as a quarterback. That is the marker of success for Nebraska football. I've been Matt McMaster, and that's been Take 5.